Welcome to the Place for Connection podcast. My name's Melissa Beaton. I'm a psychologist, wife, mother to 2 boys, and life enthusiast. I'm here to help you with the support of my guests to connect back to your own internal knowing. I'm joined here today by Melissa Hayes. She's an international certified lactation consultant and sleep expert. Mel, would you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and what got you into this space initially?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for the introduction. My name is Melissa. I have 3 young kids now. So I've got a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. But I've always worked with children. So ever since being a teenager, I've worked with kids at like childcare centres and play centres, and then went on to do some nannying, and then after school became a paediatric nurse and a midwife. So I felt really confident when I was pregnant with my first and thought that I was going to ace it because I'd literally always been with children. And then also got all these well wishes at work saying this is going to be the best time of your life. So I was like, I've got this in the bag. I'm just going to have like long lunches on maternity leave with my friends. My baby's just going to sleep whenever. It's going to be this blissful time. And then after I had my first, almost 7 years ago now, I felt really overwhelmed and overcome by the misinformation out there. I was feeling really stressed about it all, and I kind of didn't really know where to turn to or where my support systems were at either. And it was that misinformation and the stress that I was feeling that kind of pushed me to help other mums when I came out the other side of that, because I felt like if I was already a paediatric nurse and a midwife and had been doing that for over 6 years, and then had all the other experience with kids as well when I was struggling so much, then surely other mums were in the same boat as me and struggling with everything that's going on with early motherhood too. And so that's what then pushed me to kind of learn more about, in particular, feeding and sleep, so that I could help other mums bust through that, all the myths that are out there, and get some actual evidence-based support around those 2 areas in particular. And I did that by going on and doing some further study to become an international board certified lactation consultant, also known as an IBCLC. And I also became a holistic sleep coach as well. So I feel like, my medical nursing background plus those two qualifications plus the experience of having kids myself all kind of just brought everything together for me. And I suppose gave me the confidence then to feel like I could help others in the same area.
Yeah. I'm curious, like with the birth, of your first child and that tension between, it sounds like you were somewhat expert, right? Like you're not like an average mum, like you've grown up around babies and talking through breastfeeding.
Yeah.
So I wonder, what was that like for you to notice, hey, I have all this expertise and yet I'm still really struggling and feeling, it sounds like you didn't have a community around you at that time. What was that like?
I didn't really. So I had my family, which I'm always grateful for, but I just felt really lost. And I think then I felt like a bit of a failure because I had that experience and that background working with children and working in healthcare. And so then I had quite a traumatic birth with Harvey. So I felt like a bit of a failure from that, for being like, I can't, didn't get the birth that I wanted, and my body wasn't doing what it should have done. So I already had that feeling in the beginning. And then I think just then, breastfeeding was going okay, but it wasn't amazing. And the sleep stuff just like hit me like a ton of bricks. Just, I suppose, not knowing what was true and what wasn't true when it came to sleep, and being made to feel like a failure in regards to that as well. So I think I had a lot of high expectations probably on myself before going into it, and that made it even worse.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely relate.
Yeah, and then I think just that lack of support. Like I remember just Googling in those early days for is there mums groups? Is there how do I meet other mums? Because none of my friends had really had babies yet.
Yeah.
And I feel like you get a bit of support more so from your family and things in the beginning in those first couple of weeks, but then everything seems to die off. It's kind of like people stop forgetting that you're still in the thick of it. And, after a few weeks, those first few months, it is really hard. And it's almost like you need more support at that almost 4-month mark than you do in, the earlier days sometimes. And so, yeah, I just struggled, I think, in the support aspect, trying to find that community support as well, because they say, it takes a village to raise a child, but then sometimes, and for a lot of mums, I think you feel so alone because you don't have that village surrounding you, taking care of you, helping you take care of baby.
Yeah.
You're just doing it all on your own, which is really, really tough.
Yeah. It's a full-on process, right? Because we go from being, it sounds like you had a super successful career and an identity in that kind of space, and then you're kind of transported into this ulterior universe, right? And I think what I've grown to love about you, Mel, and watching your own journey over the last few years and really admired you from afar, I think, as someone who, you know, has studied a lot about infant development and about the mother child relationship, I think you're someone who speaks really from her heart and really encourages women to have a really intuitive response to their baby and follow their gut. Look, I'm wondering, what are some myths that you notice perhaps get sold to us through Instagram or through these so-called experts that you think are important for women to know about in here and you might want to discuss today?
I think the biggest one, especially after I had Harvey, was that not knowing when it came to sleep. And like you say, on Instagram and different social media platforms, there's just so much misinformation. And a lot of it's not evidence-based, and a lot of it's kind of run by people who, you know, don't have any background, they don't have any, you know, qualifications, and they're kind of just like spouting this misinformation that then this very vulnerable population like myself as new mums are led to believe is true. I think one of the biggest things which kind of led me down the holistic sleep pathway was the sleep training misinformation when I had Harvey. So again, everybody's going to do whatever suits their family, but for me, sleep training wasn't something that I wanted to do, but I felt like I had no other option and didn't really know where else to turn. And I was, you know, following advice from people who were saying they have to go down drowsy but awake, but the problem is my baby wasn't going down drowsy but awake. Or, you know, they have to sleep 12 hours at night, but my baby wasn't sleeping 12 hours at night. Or they have to have all their naps in a dark room and you can't make eye contact. And even some advice on there was saying, you know, it's okay to leave your baby to cry and it's okay if they vomit when they cry, like that's them learning how to settle. And it's like, well, that's just not right. And, you know, at one point with Harvey, we did leave him to cry because I thought that's what I was meant to be doing. And it just broke my heart. And I think I left him for like a minute in there and he was just, I could just hear him like bellowing from his nursery. And I was in the lounge room with my husband and I was like, no, I just can't do this. Like, this isn't for me. There has to be another way. And I went and got him. And that's kind of what led me more down the sleep pathway of learning more about sleep without sleep training, because it's probably the minority of what you see on social media, but there is so much information and so many ways that you can get more sleep without sleep training, and you don't have to leave your little one alone in a dark room to cry it out. And I think just learning about that and increasing my knowledge and confidence around that led me to then also lean into my intuition more when it came to sleep and when it came to feeding, and that just changed everything. And it's like third time round now, you know, I want the mums that I help to have this third time round experience rather than that first time round experience, because I feel like the experience that I had was really hard but also really common, and a lot of first time mums have that experience of being, you know, made to feel like they have to leave their little one alone in a dark room crying and crying. You know, some mums are told to put earplugs in and just go to sleep and just leave them in, you know, for 12 hours overnight. Like, it's horrendous.
Oh, that actually like kills me, right?
I know, it does. And it goes against what you feel. Like, you know, I feel like all mums just know when their baby cries, it's almost like a drill going into your head. Or that's what it's like for me. Like, when you hear your baby cry like that, it's like you have that response to respond to them and to go to them. And that's, you know, we all have these responses for a reason. And so it's kind of going against your natural instincts.
Oh, 100%, right?
Yeah.
It's like an evolutionary thing. Like, babies cry to get their needs met because they don't have other language skills, right?
Exactly.
And I love that you were able to do what made sense for you in spite of evidence to the contrary, because I think what I see a lot in clinic is quite the opposite. Like, women have that impulse to do what feels right for them, but then it's like they ignore that because a doctor told them or a community nurse told them, and so I think what you're talking about is really helpful, right? To build a community around these women where they can actually come to you or to other practitioners for advice that actually makes sense for them. Like, I remember, and I love, you did this post, and I think you do it every now and then, where you get women to send pictures of them contact napping. And I just love it because it just normalizes contact napping. And I certainly, with my last baby, had that third child experience where I felt really confident to follow my intuition. There was lots of feeding to sleep. But I noticed even with my confidence, I still had midwives telling me that I shouldn't do that. That he was using my breast like a dummy, and I was like, yes, well, that's exactly the idea of what dummies are for.
It's the OG pacifier.
So I'm thoughtful, like, what helped you to be brave enough to step out from that kind of traditional space of a midwife, because this is like quite a powerful thing to do in our profession, right?
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of rules and ways that we're meant to be, and like, so to have a big voice actually takes guts. So I'm wondering, what was the turning point for you that really had you like stepping into this power and doing what made sense for you rather than what maybe mainstream tells us we should do?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I feel like I'm still finding my voice. That's nice that you're saying. Like, I feel like I'm still getting the confidence, because you're right. There is so much mainstream information out there, and it's really hard. Like, I always kind of tell mums, like, let it go in one ear and out the other, but it's really hard to do. And especially when you're saying you're getting advice from like your pediatricians, your GPs, your child health nurses, you know, all of these people. No, not all of these people. Some of these people have very outdated views, and that's where you're going to hear a lot of misinformation, because a lot of the sleep training culture, it only really came up a few hundred years ago, and that's still kind of going around in circulation. And often with health professionals, they don't actually have any specific training in sleep. So it's kind of just what they're hearing from other people, which is then what they're passing on. So that makes it really, really tricky. And then it's, really difficult for families when they're hearing that information from somebody in that position of power to then kind of, like you say, almost feel like, okay, well, maybe I should be trusting them. Maybe they're the expert on their baby. But then just coming back to the fact that, no, you are always the expert on your baby. And I think kind of just, I don't really know what the turning point was, but just kind of learning more about it and learning to trust myself. I think every day I just feel like I learnt to trust myself a little bit more, and life just felt easier when I did that. And so as life felt easier, then I just kind of kept going into that and kept leaning into this season of motherhood instead of feeling like I was fighting an uphill battle against it. I kind of just completely leant into it, tried to start trusting myself more. And then I think just the more I did that, the easier it got. And then I think, again, just going off and just learning more, I suppose, about that holistic sleep and that sleep without sleep training also gave me the confidence that, you know, what I was doing wasn't wrong, and feeding to sleep is really biologically normal. And, you know, we've got special hormones in our breast milk that are actually designed to make babies sleepy, and they're designed to help make you feel relaxed. And so, you know, Mother Nature is never wrong. You know, it wouldn't have done that by accident. And so just knowing that these things are really normal. And I think when you look back through history and see that responsive behavior of, you know, responding to baby when they need you, and staying close to baby, you know, all of these things have been done throughout history, and it's only really in these last couple of hundred years that things have changed. So it kind of makes more sense, I suppose. In my mind, I think of it like a ruler, and I think it's like these last like little couple of millimeters where things have changed, and the rest of it has always been like mums have always stayed close to their baby. They've always responded to them, you know, when they've needed it. They've also had this village to support them, which has been really, really helpful, what we don't have now.
Yes.
But I think I then also try to build my village of like-minded mums, because we know that mum-to-mum support is so essential. And it's just so helpful in so many ways. And so then I was kind of going out and trying to find, okay, are there mum groups where I can kind of meet people who are similar to me and have my same values? And I was able to find one, which was really helpful in the early days or earliest days with Harvey. And then since then I've also gone on to create my own membership community to try to create that safe space for mums as well.
Oh, amazing.
So they can get a bit more support, because it's tricky, especially if your friends' values don't align with your own. I don't know if you found that or not at all, where some friends are like, you know, super keen on sleep training, and some people will want to, and that's okay. But if you don't align with that, and maybe, you know, you parent in a bit more of a responsive way, or you just want to do things a bit differently, it's really helpful to have those mums that are going through the same thing as you, that you can chat through everything with, and that you're not going to feel judged by as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important topic to bring up. I noticed you talked about it a little before as well, that this is really not about shaming mothers who also choose to follow the advice of pediatricians or nurses, or perhaps because of their own needs want to sleep train, that we all do things differently. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that, and for us to hold space for that. But I think you're right. You know, like when we have children, like our friends might have differing values to us. And as someone who's quite an outspoken attachment parenting person, I noticed a lot of my friends almost would like make excuses for their behavior. And I was always just like, you know, you do what works for you and for your family. I'm not shaming you. I just want to talk about what I feel strongly about too. So it sounds like in your membership community, Cocoon and Cradle, it's really about creating a space for women to just be open about their struggles and to have other women and you as, you know, the expert and then other guest experts kind of coming in and helping them shape their own intuitive process. Is that kind of right?
Definitely. And like we have, you know, all kinds of beautiful mums join the community, and they're at all different stages of like newborns through to like older toddlers. And 100% right. It's never about shaming anybody for anything like that, because everybody's going to have different ways of parenting, and that's okay, and different kind of values and beliefs. But the majority of the mums in there, I suppose, are wanting that support that, you know, contact napping's okay and it's not a bad thing, and, you know, it's okay if my baby doesn't sleep 12 hours overnight, because that's really unrealistic for a lot of babies. And I suppose a lot of it even is just normalising normal for them, with, you know, trying to find that information where it kind of just takes the pressure off, doesn't it? Like you just can breathe.
Yeah. Or even if you just see other mums who are like, oh yeah, my baby only sleeps for this amount of time. You're like, oh, hallelujah. There's like another mum in that position. And I guess what's also probably really helpful for mums is having access to like what's not normal.
Yeah.
So like perhaps when there is something where you do require a specialist or, you know, like a one-on-one consultation with someone like you around breastfeeding, like perhaps there is something going on that just needs a little more support.
Yeah, definitely. Like there's 100% some red flags when it comes to sleep. You know, they might have airway issues or, you know, allergies, intolerances. You know, there's quite a few things that can cause issues. So kind of, again, making sure that we're referring to the right people if they do need some extra support, because a lot of it you just don't know until you know. You know what I mean? Even with my own kids, like they have all had tongue ties, but I didn't pick up, you know, any of them until I became a lactation consultant myself at IBCLC. And then I realised that, oh, Harvey's got a tongue tie, and I wonder if this is why he's sleeping with his mouth open. And you know, I wonder, so there's all of these things that you kind of, you don't know what you don't know. And so just getting a bit of extra support. And I think that's why it's really helpful having the expert speakers come on, because they, you know, are professionals in their field, and they can offer that bit of guidance and just that little bit of extra information. So if there are any red flags, we can go, oh, okay, you know, this might be a person who can help you look into it a bit further. Yeah.
If you could go back in time, you know, to your first whether it's during pregnancy or even preconception or birth, or, you know, what are some things you wish you knew back then that you knew now that may have been helpful for you at that time?
Oh gosh, there's probably a few. I think that one of the main ones would just be kind of trusting myself. Like giving myself permission to trust myself, and that I am the expert on my baby, and it's not, you know, it's not any of the doctors. You are always the expert. And even as myself, I know you referred to me as the expert in the group before. I definitely don't see myself as the expert. I see myself as, you know, just there to kind of guide the mums and support the mums. You know, I think you're always the expert on your baby. And also, I suppose a big thing that I felt in the beginning, in particular with Harvey, was that it felt like this is how my life was going to be forever. And in those kind of sleep depriving 4-month moments where sleep often does go a bit sideways, and I was waking up at every hour at night, and, you know, for 2 weeks, I just remember just crying in the shower in the morning because I was just so exhausted by the time the morning came, and I was too scared to have him in my bed. And so I was kind of getting up and down and kind of going back and forward from the bedroom to the nursery all night, and that was making it even more tiring. And I just remember having this feeling like, this is how it's going to be forever. I'm always going to be this tired. Like, it's always going to be like this. It's always going to be this hard. And I think just having 3 kids now has given me that beautiful benefit of hindsight, where you go, oh, it's not going to be like that forever. And, you know, that goes for the good things and the bad things. It's never going to be like how it is right now forever. And so kind of that just gives you the bit of a sense of relief, I suppose. And I mean, as you go through, you know, newborn stages, baby stages, toddler stages, preschool stages, you know, and on, they each have their own challenges that they bring. But that challenge, you're like, yes, I do.
Yes.
But that's not going to be your forever. So I think kind of it was my frame of mind. I think your mindset, as you know, plays a lot into how you experience motherhood and how you experience life in general. And so I think just kind of giving myself that peace of mind that it's not going to be like this forever. This is a phase. The phase is going to pass. And also, I suppose, permission to ask for help as well. So I I could have been better with, you know, going to my family and being like, I need help with this, you know. Can you just take the dog for a walk, or can you do this, or can you do that, or can you bring over some home cooked meals, or, you know, even doing some more like paid delivery services like some U-Foods, or getting a cleaner, or just some things to take the pressure off you and just take something off your plate, because it's so much when you're doing it majority of the time on your own.
I think those are all really important points. I'm like struggling to choose which one I go with, because I think they're all so important. In my own work, I often, in the kind of pregnancy stage, I'll often suggest to women to like start talking to family and friends about how they can support the mother, infant, other parent after, you know, the birth of the baby, and what that looks like, and to put some practical things in place. So I love that you mentioned that, because that's something that, you know, we do in prep, in psychology. I'm also thoughtful about, you know, the two other points that you mentioned. The first being like following your own innate knowing, right? Because we are animals essentially. You know, you watch all these other animals birth and they just, it's so fucking gnarly. Like they just know what to do, right?
Yeah, they do.
I'm like, how do they just know what to do? And I even remember with the birth of my first, it was also a little traumatizing, because no one knew that I was in labour, and I was in this room on my own with my adopted mum, who was a legend, usually talks a lot but was totally silent during this process. And I didn't know I was birthing, but I just did all these intuitive things to help me. And then I was fully dilated before I had any intervention, right? So I think, you know, like, like, isn't that amazing? Like I didn't even know I was.
So incredible.
So if you could suggest something that could help women to follow that innate knowing, like, are there any tools or ways of thinking or being that you've learnt or that you teach in your community to help women to really trust in their gut?
I think one of the biggest things that kind of helps and that gets in the way of that is too much other information coming in at the same time, right? So it's like, you know, with birth, for example, we know that like if you probably were taken out of the situation that you were in, or for me, for example, I had really beautiful birth second and third time round, but that's because I knew exactly I knew I wanted to stay at home for as long as possible, because I just had my safe space at home. I felt really secure. I could do what I wanted. I could work through my breathing techniques that I knew that I didn't know first time round, and then kind of go to hospital last minute. And I feel like, you know, even with studies have shown, like if you have a birthing woman and you kind of suddenly change her location, put her in like bright lights, like loads of people come in, stressful environment, that can literally stop the birth.
Wow,
like it's crazy. And
that's
so
wild, isn't
like
it?
it's almost like,
oh my gosh,
you kind of know what to do, but then it's extra interventions from outside, you know, sources that then can kind of not stuff up your brain, but kind of like stop what is naturally meant to be happening. And I do find that with, you know, after you have your baby, it's almost like just there's too much information. And it's so funny because that's what my mum says. She's like, oh, there was no Googling or anything. You know, when I had you guys, I just did what I thought felt right. And a lot of the time we just need to come back to, you know, what feels right for us. And one of the ways that you can do that is literally go through and like cull your social media. Like I would say, like, try to either stay off your phone, or when you're on your phone, kind of go through and delete any accounts that don't make you feel good. So like go through and be really harsh with your social media, because a lot of the time, you know, as parents, we sit on our phones, we kind of scroll, and then we're fed this information, and that goes in and it just plants little seeds of doubt around different things. And, you know, I know myself, even with all of the tools and things that I know now, when I was trying to do a post the other day and I was looking specifically for sleep training information, I started searching for it. All of a sudden, my feed was bombarded with sleep training information. And I was reading through it. And I was like, this is making me feel so stressed. And this is also with all the background that I have now. And so it's like, for the mums that don't have that same background, to be reading through this information is just so stress inducing. And it's almost like if we could just cull that, or, you know, just make sure you're following that people that are kind of giving you the right information and supportive information, so that when you're opening your phone, you're not being told you're doing it wrong. You know, you need to be putting your baby down. You're creating bad habits. You know, you're told information that is going to be supporting your journey. And so that's probably one of the best things to do. I think if you're pregnant, just going through your Instagram and just literally deleting any accounts that don't feel right to you, that don't make you feel good, or as they pop up, just unfollowing them. Because it's often the information that we get from our phone that can be one of the biggest influences, and that can be, you know, popping that self-doubt into our heads. And even like we talked about before with, you know, health professionals telling us things like you're creating bad habits, you're creating a rod for your own back, they need to learn how to fall asleep on their own. I would always say, like, have a second opinion, a third opinion. If somebody tells you something, it doesn't matter who they are, does not matter who they are, and it doesn't feel right to you, go talk to somebody you trust, or go talk to a couple of other people, because, you know, that's going to give you help you make an informed decision around what you want to do. And I always think, I'm a big believer in, like, just go with your gut. Like, if something doesn't feel right, I just want to do it. Like, your gut is going to be your best bet. So just go with whatever you feel comfortable with, rather than what, you know, a so-called expert is telling you to do.
I really like that notion of, like, the gut being like the second brain.
Yeah, it is.
And I think when, I don't know about you, Mel, but when I had my first son, and this was for my own my own reasons, I must be having a rise emotionally, and my voice is getting a bit which happens when feelings rise. But what I noticed when I had my first son was it was as though, like, I didn't have a good connection with my body. And so I didn't get a lot of that really important data that I needed. I wondered, like, from your experience, how do you find women can build that mind-body connection such that, you know, perhaps they get more of that information from their physiology? Like, have you worked with anyone around that kind of thing specifically?
I think one of the best things you can do is, after you have babies, skin to skin can be really helpful.
Okay.
Obviously, talking to somebody like yourself during pregnancy and afterwards is going to be super beneficial. But I think from, you know, getting those messages to your body about your baby, and, you know, you learning about your baby and your baby learning about you, skin to skin, you know, they call it the magic hour in that first hour after birth, but it's beneficial the whole way through. I think a lot of people think that, you know, I have skin to skin after birth and that's it. But skin to skin, it builds that bonding, it builds that attachment, it helps you both get to know each other, it helps you pick up on their feeding cues and, you know, all of the different cues that they show you. And it just builds that connection with your baby. And, you know, it's obviously got so many physiological benefits as well. Like, it regulates their temperature, regulates their heart rate, regulates their breathing, you know, it gives you both all of these hormonal shifts, and you get all these lovely feel-good hormones going through both of your bodies as well, which really helps. And so, you know, there was even a study the other day that said that mums who were pumping with skin to skin produced 50% more breast milk when pumping.
Oh my gosh, that's
massive.
wild. I didn't know that.
It's crazy. And so, you know,
50%.
50%. It's massive.
That is wild. I wish I knew that.
Yeah.
That's so helpful.
Like, you know, having baby close to you, and then also talking to people, you know, like yourself, who can really help in that space as well, can be probably one of the two best things. Because a lot of the time, you know, we have baby or you have a baby in the hospital and they wrap them up like a little burrito and they put them in the plastic container, and, you know, it doesn't help. It doesn't help you get to know each other. It doesn't help you bring your milk in. It doesn't help you pick up on all of their little cues, and then to also sense that you're there. So I think skin to skin has, heaps of wonderful benefits.
Yeah. So it sounds like that's kind of your thoughts around building that attunement between mum and her body, baby and baby's body, but also, you know, for baby, they don't have a sense of being separate to mum, which is a really important part of it too, right? Like, babies think they're still kind of part of the mother, so there's no sense of detachment. And I think that's often what I see women really struggling with, because we're so taught, like, that we're separate and autonomous, and then suddenly when you have, like, this thing that just wants you nonstop. And I really related to that notion of you saying, and like, oh my gosh, my heart just ached for you in that shower every morning as this sleep deprived human being who's just like, oh my God, when is this going to end? In terms of, you know, your learnings, your experience, what do you think helps you or helped you back then to get through that period that was so difficult?
Um, yeah, that was really tough. And I think probably most mums have got to the point where they're like, this isn't going to end. Like, this is just
Oh, fully.
horrible. Like, I think we all kind of go through those phases. And I suppose it's the unknown, isn't it? Because you're like, well, it's been going on for 2 weeks. Like, I've been up every hour for 2 weeks. You know, how long can this go on for? I can't sustain this.
Oh, fully. I see mums who, you know, have violent impulses towards their baby and they're like, I'm so terrible. And I'm like, you're not terrible. This is normal.
Yeah.
Like, and this is something that I want women to know, you know, an impulse isn't that you're going to do something.
Yeah, I think we've all had those impulses, don't we? And
Yeah.
it's kind of like, what is that? Yeah.
Yeah, but that can also be okay, right?
Yeah.
Like as long as, you know, you're talking about it, you're getting support, you're feeling held, like that doesn't mean you're bad.
No, definitely not.
And you're certainly not violent or, you know, that this is just what comes in when we are sleep deprived and angry and sad and
100%.
Yeah.
I think probably back then when I'd got to that point of feeling like it's been 2 weeks, what's going to happen? Like, how long can this go on for? Sleep actually improved after that because it was kind of that typical 4-month period where sleep does go pretty crappy for a few weeks.
Yes.
So I think it was literally for us with Harvey, it was like 2 weeks of hourly wakes and then sleep just naturally improved on its own. But I think then when I was learning more about sleep afterwards, I kind of understood the fluidity, if that's the right word, of sleep, how it does go up and down. And I could then adjust my expectations because I knew it was going to be more like a roller coaster and it wasn't going to be this straight line of going up all the time.
Yes.
And then I also learnt that he had low sleep needs. And so I was trying to get him to sleep as much as possible and just so focused and obsessed, I would say. I think because I'd always had a sense of control in my previous life to children. And so then trying to assert that same level of control over what can I control now? Like, I'll try to control sleep. I think any mum knows you can't really control sleep. You know, you can set up the optimal environment and, you know, do all of these things to optimize sleep, but you can't you can't force your baby to sleep.
No.
But learning that he had low sleep needs helped me as well because then I could kind of take the pressure off and go, oh, okay, he's probably just getting all the sleep that he needs and I don't need to like force sleep on him every second of the day. So yeah, but I think just again, knowing that kind of realistic expectations of infant sleep, especially during that first year, definitely helped me because I didn't have that information when I was going through that at 4 months, and I would have had some tools then that I could have probably used to help me get through that time rather than just like crying in the shower every morning and just kind of suffering in silence.
Yeah. So seeing infant sleep development as a process, it's like I'll equate it to like therapy, right? Like if someone comes to therapy, I'm like, we're not walking straight up the mountain. Like it's not going to be linear. It's going to be ups and downs and there'll be curveballs and it'll be. So I guess for women to hold that in mind when they are encountering difficulties with sleep, it sounds like also noticing that different children have different needs around sleep, and some won't need as much sleep and some will need heaps. And also I like to address this notion of unicorn babies because we've all got one in our circle. We're like, oh my God, I'm so jealous of you and your bloody unicorn
the baby that just sleeps through from 6 weeks.
Oh my God, Father, I had so many of them around me and I was like, honestly, this is not fair. Like how is this happening for me? Like, in terms of that experience with Harvey, I think you describe a few really beautiful kind of awakenings for you in terms of learning about specific sleep needs and learning about different ways to do things. What do you think about in terms of women as they're noticing that their baby perhaps doesn't do things the way that their friend's baby does it, or Joe Blogg's baby does it? Like, are there any thoughts that you have about what those women could do or how they could think about things that might kind of give them a bit of breathing space?
Yeah, I think just that, what's the saying? Comparison is a thief of, what's the saying? Comparison is a thief of, what is it?
Joy, I don't know.
Joy? Yeah, that's it.
But it's like...
Comparison is a thief of joy, and it's so true, especially when it comes to baby sleep, because like you were saying, you know, everybody knows that friend who has that baby who just sleeps through the night from, 6 weeks of age, literally never wakes up overnight again. Everything seems to just be going so beautifully, and then you think, oh my God, what is wrong with my baby? Like, what have I done? Because either I failed or my baby's broken because they're just not doing what that baby over there is. But if you look at the majority of babies, they won't be doing that. So what we see with these unicorn babies, that is a minority of all the babies. And so we're comparing ourselves to the minority. We're not comparing ourselves to the majority. And if we look at what more average babies and average sleep looks like, it's going to make everyone feel a whole lot better, because we know that most babies are going to be waking. Most babies are going to be having night feeds. And even there was a study the other day that said, I think it's babies from 0 to 18 months of age, most were waking at least a couple of times a night, and included in those wakes for most babies were night feeds as well.
Yeah.
And so knowing that it's not, something that's just for this kind of young baby period, like older babies and toddlers, it's really normal for them as well to wake up overnight and to need you for not only feeds, but for that comfort and, connection overnight as well, which we know that, feeds are just one part of the picture, and, they breastfeed for a whole, or bottle feed, however they're feeding, for a whole heap of different reasons. Because I think people kind of think, oh, okay, well, they've been fed, I've changed the nappy, so they should be fine. Like, why are they still wanting me? But it's like, 100%. Well, they need you as a person, because you're their safe space, and you're offering them that comfort and connection, which is, it's almost like, I think, like if I went to bed at night time and my partner had just kind of given me dinner and then left me, I'd be like, where's my hug? Where's that sense of connection at the end of the night? And it's so funny, because I think I can never sleep properly or settle if my partner's not there with me in bed at night time now. And I'm like, and yet we expect our babies who are brand new to this world, who still think and believe that they are part of you as one being, to then kind of sleep alone in their room and not call out for us overnight, and not have night feeds when their tummies are so tiny, and when breast milk is super easily digested. And, we almost expect more of them than what we do of adults.
Yeah, it's wild. I loved that description that you gave earlier as well about, in your career, you had a lot of control.
Yeah.
Right? You could determine what you did. And I think the one thing that I learned about being a mum is I don't have any control. No. They're a whole different being, right?
Yeah.
With their own mind and their own way of relating and their own interests. And I guess this is different as they're a baby, but really my job as a mum is just to create that safe, nurturing, loving, connected space where I'm doing as good a job as I can, we're all imperfect. No one's doing a perfect job, but, a good enough mum that then that baby will grow and be able to regulate. And because this is what I often see in my practice, is the people who didn't get that early on in life are the ones who really struggle with emotional regulation.
Yeah.
And often I'm like, it's not your fault that you struggle with this. And it's also not your mum and dad's fault. I don't want to shame them either. They obviously did the best job they could, but maybe the best job wasn't good enough, right? And so it's also just knowing that, that dependence is totally biologically normal.
Yeah, definitely.
But I wonder, from your perspective, and I guess I see a lot of this in the women who I work with, but what do you think women really need, in that early time, given that they're kind of surrendering everything to this baby, right? Their sleep, their breast, their, biological reproductive organs, to birth. It's a full-on thing. What do you think those women really need in those early stages?
Everything.
Yeah,
there's so much. I love how you were talking about, dependency, and because we know that, I think there's a lot of talk about how, okay, they need to be independent, they need to be on their own, but we know that it's through deep dependency that eventually comes independence. And so I suppose just knowing that as well, that there's no pressure to force them to be on their own, that deep dependency will eventually lead to independence, which is so beautiful to know. But back to your question about what mums need in the beginning, I feel like I've just come out the other side of this with Amelia. So she's now 18 months. And I feel like for so long, you're just in the trenches, aren't you? You probably remember this with your kids. It's absolutely relentless. It is completely 24/7. You don't get a break. You can't even go to the toilet alone, especially if you're older kids, because they just come in and follow you in there. So it's especially with 3, I feel like if I didn't have, if one wasn't needing me, at least one of the other 2 were. And so it's so full on. And so it's really tricky. There's no one answer. I think the biggest thing is to try to get help wherever you can, because it's going to be probably the hardest thing that you do, raising children. And so if you have a partner, have honest conversations with them about what you need, because they're not going to be mind readers as much as we want them to be. You know, when you're struggling, tell them you're struggling. And I think actually even like when you're asking for help, you know, tell people exactly what could help you. You know, if there's like one practical thing, you know, I need you to make the dinner tonight, or I need you to walk the dog, or I need you to do something that's going to practically help you. And even with your friends and family, I feel like a lot of them want to help, but they don't know what to help with, or, you know, they say like, oh, you know, do you want help with something? But you might not have even thought about what you need help with. So even going back to, you know, when you're pregnant, I love the idea that you talk to families about practical steps that they can do to help the person who's having the baby. Because I think even I saw at a baby shower the other day, they had like almost like a list of kind of jobs that people kind of handed out. And so each person had like one job to do that could help that family practically. And so I think that can really help.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, there's certain things that obviously you have to do. Like if you're a breastfeeding mum, you'll be the one, you know, breastfeeding baby. But there's so much else that goes into it that we need to be like either dropping the balls on if they're not urgent. You know, you hear about these plastic and glass balls and which ones can you drop and which ones can't you drop. And so dropping any of the plastic balls, any of the ones that's not going to break your life, just drop them. They're not urgent. And any of the ones that you need to do, like, you know, breastfeeding your baby if you're breastfeeding, 100% do that. But then delegate as much as you can to everybody else, and don't do the stuff that doesn't imminently need doing. And then I think, because even if you do that, and even if you're just focusing on the basics, you know, breastfeeding and just literally nurturing your little one and keeping them alive is a full-time job. So even if you're not doing anything else, that is still like a massive job in itself. And one of the things that probably helped me the most third time round was trying to do something that I enjoyed at the same time as meeting Amelia's needs. And so, you know, we co-slept third time round, which I didn't do with the first two because I didn't have the knowledge or support back then to feel comfortable doing so. But I did third time round, and so we had safe co-sleeping conditions, and I loved it because it got me so much more rest than the first two times around. I was like, this is brilliant. Why did I not do this earlier?
Yes. Yeah. Well, there's so much scary information about co-sleeping, right?
If you wanted some information for any of the listeners, I really love the book Safe Infant Sleep by Dr. James McKenna. He's like a worldwide leader in the co-sleeping field.
And I know you've got some really good content on your website as well, Cocoon and Cradle, around safe sleep.
To try to support families with that. But yeah, so what I would do, which was like the highlight of my day, was to just leave Adrian with the older two kids who were just going wild, and I would just go into the bedroom, lie down with Amelia, have my laptop, have some food, have a snack, and I would just feed her to sleep for her nap, and I'd watch something on TV or like read a book, and it was so nice because you got that peace, that quiet. Amelia was happy because she was close to me. I was happy because I was lying down and resting and like watching something on TV or doing something that I wanted to do at the same time. And plus also because we had set up for those safe co-sleeping conditions, I could also sleep if I wanted to. And obviously that's easier if you have older kids, if your partner is home, because they can also kind of just take the other kids while you do that. But I would still do it during the week when he was at work, because Harvey was at school, and Harper, who is my toddler, is getting a little bit older now, she would also have her lunch nap. So I would literally just like, as soon as she went for her lunch nap, I would take Amelia and we would have a lie down. And it was just kind of meeting everyone's, trying to work out a way that could meet the most people's needs, I suppose.
Yes.
So that really helped, doing something that I enjoyed at the same time. And then something that I'm probably not very good at, but I'm really trying to be better at, and then I talk to families all the time at, is just trying to have some small act of self-care. So I was okay at doing those bigger things. I would always try to have a massage booked in every 6 weeks, and I found that I would just book it in for the year, and then I didn't have to think about it. It was just always booked in, and my, you know, usually was on a time where I had my mum or my husband that could watch the kids, and I could go do that. So that was brilliant when I started doing that again after I had Amelia. But then just those kind of small acts every day, for me, I found harder to get into the routine of doing. So even, you know, what would help me is having like 5 minutes of alone time, just 5 minutes where I'm just by myself, you know, somebody else has got the kids, I can put my feet on the grass, have a hot coffee, or just do something for myself. Or if I didn't have the option of being alone, you know, taking everybody out for a walk so I could get some fresh air, get in nature, because we know that stress, being outside in nature reduces our stress levels by so much. I can't remember the percentage, but a huge amount.
Yeah.
Or even I remember with Amelia when she was younger, like I would just put all the kids in the car, especially if I was feeling touched out and I didn't want anybody to touch me. I'll just put all the kids in the car. Amelia would usually have like her last nap of the day in the car, and the kids would just point out farm animals and would just drive somewhere where there was like some sort of animal for them to look at.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I've got like a hot drink or cold drink, whatever it was, you know, like nobody's touching me. The kids are all strapped in, you know, everybody's kind of like half amused.
Yeah.
I've probably just rambled on for ages, but those are some of the things that
No,
helped me.
no, not at all. And I think it's about normalizing that sometimes women are going to feel touched out.
Yeah.
And normalizing that we're going to have mixed feelings towards our babies and our other children and our partners, and that's all okay.
Yeah.
And it's also okay to like just take off your shoes and go and sit on the grass, and you know, because I don't know if they're called ions. I'm not an expert on this. But that the earth can actually give us like energetic kind of, I don't know what it's called. It sounds a bit hippie organic, but that's how I roll. Probably should learn more about it. Might interview someone about that kind of stuff soon. But you know, like that can actually be very energizing for us. I often talk to women about just rather than looking at their phone first thing, just going outside, getting some sunlight, taking in, you know, just a few kind of breaths deeply just to kind of get the nervous system back to a homeostatic level, which is our baseline. I think these are really important things, right? And tips like just chucking all the kids in the car and going and pointing out farm animals. And I see my husband doing that, like when our kids are dysregulated, playing games as a way to distract them or divert their attention away from whatever's triggering that. Like if you could kind of leave women with one or two things that you think could transform their breastfeeding or sleep journey, what do you think those one or two things would be? If you had to really kind of center it on.
It's tricky because there's so many things that can help, so it's hard to kind of narrow it down. I think one of the things probably would have been what I was talking about earlier with that, how it is now is not how it is always going to be. And I think that's so, you know, when we talk about how that's for the good and the bad, like, you know, when they're super cute and they've just taken their first steps and you just want to stay in that moment forever, you know, it's not always going to be like that, and that can sometimes make you feel a bit sad. But then also when it comes to things like when sleep's really, really rough and you're waking up every hour, again, it's not always going to be like that either. So I think that mindset has kind of helped me enjoy the good more and maybe take notice of the small things too, because I think especially third time round, I just know how fast it all goes, and I feel like it just flies. You probably know with older kids, it just flies by. Like everybody tells you how it's gonna, the days are long and the years are short, and it sounds cliche, but it's so true. Like the years have just flown by, and so even third time around with Amelia, I'm really trying to just slow down. And she's already a year and a half, and I have no idea where that time went, but slow down and enjoy it, and kind of just, you know, even just taking the time to like notice all her little features on her face, because it just, next year they're going to be completely different. It just changes so much. And so it's helped me enjoy the good, and then it's also helped me kind of take the pressure off myself when things are bad and when things are hard. And even like you were saying before, you know, motherhood is full of paradoxes and things, you know, you often have kind of like opposite ideas at the same time. And so you can absolutely love motherhood, and it can also be really, really, really hard. And so kind of giving yourself permission that that's okay, because I think I'll put a lot of pressure on myself in the beginning to be like, well, I shouldn't be feeling this way because, you know, this is what I've always wanted and I've always wanted to be a mum. But giving yourself permission to go, it's okay to love this, and it's okay to also, you know, some days hate this and some days be resentful, and to some days, you know, do all of those other things as well. That's really helped me. And then I think as well, honestly, probably the biggest thing that's helped me that has just been probably helped by having more kids is just kind of letting go of any outside pressure and literally just doing whatever I want, you know, like third time round, we co-slept from day one, we contact napped the whole time, like we always fed to sleep. Like I just did what I wanted. I didn't listen to anybody else. I didn't listen to any outside advice. I just 100% have always done what I wanted third time round, whereas the first two times I didn't do that first time round with Harvey. I felt a lot of pressure to kind of do things a certain way based on how other people were telling me I should do things, like, no, don't feed to sleep, don't carry them all the time, don't pick them up as soon as they cry. And Harper, I definitely felt like I was leaning into my own intuition a lot more. But third time round, I probably shouldn't swear, but I just did not care. Like, I did not.
Yeah. You're allowed to swear.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
really vulgar, so
I was like,
it's really welcome.
And it's even just kind of helped me just enjoy motherhood. Like, I've enjoyed motherhood. I've probably woken up the most third time round because Amelia's been my biggest koala baby out of all three. So I've probably woken up the most third time round and yet enjoyed it and also felt the most rested, which is crazy. Like, and I think just giving myself permission to lean into whatever felt right for me has just taken off all the pressure and has just allowed me to really enjoy it.
Oh man, it's so next level, right? I remember with Fred, like because my eldest is 15. Can you believe it? Oh my God, crazy. Father, what even happened? How is that 15 years ago? And then I waited so long to have Freddie. So I had the benefit of lots of knowledge, and fortunately I'd studied a lot about infants and done an infant study where I observed a baby mother dyad for the first year of life, which was just unreal, and still so grateful to that family because I learnt so much. But I remember the same with Freddie. Like, I was just so in love with like the process and compared with Seb, where I was just, again, like getting all that conflicting information and feeling really overwhelmed and unsure and like doubting myself. And like you had a similar experience of having him in his bed and screaming, crying, and me standing outside going, oh my God, what do I do? And saying to his dad at the time, like, oh my God, this feels so wrong. And he's like, well, just don't do it. Like, what is going on here? Whereas with Fred, I just didn't feel like that. I think the second thing I love is talking about the paradox of parenting.
Yeah, it's full of paradoxes, isn't it?
Oh my God, Father, like all the mixed feelings, all the anxiety and complexity, and just like holding that, right? And I think as mothers especially, we hold so much complexity with our kids, and even, like as they get older, then all the new complexities that come through and difficulties. And I think that's what keeps us well, is when we can hold all those mixed feelings, see the love and the anger concurrently, see the jealousy or the grief. I'll share a little anecdote quickly about a trip that I wanted to do when Freddie was still breastfeeding, almost kind of towards the end of the journey, and had a trip to New Zealand booked. I remember going to see my psychologist at the time and saying, oh, I've got this trip to New Zealand booked. I just want you to tell me that I can go, like that I'm being neurotic. And he's like, why would I tell you that your gut response is neurotic, Mel? I'd be inviting you to lie to yourself and ignore yourself. And I like cried. I was so devastated. All I wanted to do was go to New Zealand. And I guess that's kind of my own example of like, I was enraged at his dependence on me. He was too. He should be finished breastfeeding. Like, he shouldn't need me. And that's just absolute bullshit, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Like 100% bullshit. I don't know what kind of lie I'd been told that at 2 years old they didn't need you anymore. But, and I made the best decision. I got to go to New Zealand just recently, a couple of years later with my eldest son, and had an amazing time, and would never have had such a good time, at that time, because I would have felt terrible guilt. And, like, I'm so grateful to you for coming on, especially for my first episode. Thanks
for having me.
You've just been such a beautiful champion of me and of all the mums who you work with. Like, when I listen to you speak, I can't help but think how blessed these mums must be to have you in their corner. And it's just beautiful work that you're doing, and I'm really grateful to you for having the guts to do this in a space where there's just so much mixed information. I wondered, like, is there anything that you want to kind of talk about or discuss before we finish up, Mel?
I don't think so, but I'm really happy to be here, and again, I'm also a big fan of yours, so I feel like you do such amazing work for mums, and it's so important. I think a lot of the time we don't even, realise there's people that we can talk to that can help, in pregnancy and after we have babies, or for all different areas of their life. And so, I feel like it's just such important work that you do as well. So, really grateful to be here.
Thanks. Yeah, I think my life's mission, a lot like yours, is just, I probably spent 20 years trying to come home to myself through my own therapy. And I think in doing that, I just don't want women to have to spend 20 years doing that, right?
And I feel like that's the same with me, like all the hardships in kind of early motherhood. I think it's just, you just don't want other people to go through that, do you? You're like, okay, I don't want anybody else to go through that. So if I can help in any way to kind of help people just skip that phase or get through that phase, then that's what we can do.
Yeah. So how should women connect with you if they want to work with you or join your community, Cocoon and Cradle?
Yeah.
What should they do?
So the easiest place is probably to find me on Instagram at Cocoon and Cradle. Otherwise, I've got the website cocoonandcradle.com, and you can find more information there as well. But yeah, I do one-on-one consults. All over through the Gold Coast and northern New South Wales, but virtually worldwide as well.
Oh, awesome.
And I've also got the membership community, which again is worldwide. I've got people from all around the world in there, which is really cool.
Wow.
And that's available on the website too. And I've also got a few kind of digital downloads and ebooks and things which can definitely provide so much more guidance around those first couple of years, and what to expect, and ways that we can support each other through those kind of first few years as well. But all the information will either be on my website or on my Instagram bio too.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Mel. So it's Melissa Hayes from Cocoon and Cradle. Thank you so much for joining the Place for Connection podcast. So excited. Hopefully we'll get to chat again sometime down the track, because I feel like there's like 100 more questions that I want to ask you. But for any women wanting lactation support or sleep consultation, Mel is your lady. If you want to find any more information about me or about Mel, there'll be some information posted under the content, or you can follow me on Instagram, Zenso House. If you've liked the content, please leave me a review. That would be amazing. And subscribe to the podcast, available on Apple, Spotify and YouTube. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.